Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Wednesday here on the Pagan Perspective. I'm your host, Eric, and this week we are talking about drug abuse and use in practice. This week we are talking about drug abuse, education, use, paganism, all that fun stuff. We got two different questions from two different viewers. The first is from Jer about drug addiction, and I'm just going to go ahead and read it. Are the people in the pagan community, are there people in the pagan community that work to educate their brothers and sisters about drugs? There is a well-known history of using certain drugs in the shamanic traditions. However, when we, as 21st century Americans, think of drugs, it's not necessarily the same ones the shamans used in their practice. There are drugs out there that are inherently evil or simply susceptible to abuse. There are also drugs out there that may benefit people, help us in our vision quests, or help us reach oneness when used carefully and with luck. I used to be a crackhead and a meth addict. Luckily for me, I had never had affinities to pills or heroin or any other downers after I gave them a try, but I have a lot to say to people experimenting with the bad drugs. Not parental type stuff, but just relaying my experiences with them. It's a horrible, horrible place to go, and it pains me to think of another human going through what I went through. I thank the moon I made it. I was really close. So let's just talk about that really quick before we get on to the second subject. When it comes to drug abuse, I do have a little bit of experience with that. I did used to smoke meth, and I have not done so in many years, and I am very proud of that. It was something that I've had a harder time quitting smoking. I still smoke. I had a harder time quitting smoking than I did any of the drugs that I liked, but that was my decision to not do those anymore because I liked them so much and I knew that they were so terribly detrimental in a very, very rapid way that I decided I needed to get out of them. Unfortunately, there are no pagan specific that I am aware of or have ever been able to find. There are no pagan-specific, resources out there to use as a an aversion to the heavy drugs, the ones that are extraordinarily addictive, like heroin and meth and all of the other the things that are horribly detrimental at first use. But it's something that, in my opinion, if you can't get out of it yourself, you can ask your community and the people you know to help you. As long as it's something that you are actually willing to go through the pains and suffering of withdrawals and everything else, even though you know it's going to be hard, you should try very much to get the help of your friends and family and those who are willing to support you. And if you don't have that, it might be a less pleasant option, but Narcotics Anonymous, although it is Christian-based, and Alcoholics Anonymous, although it is kind of a Christian-based program, will be more help than you're getting if nobody around you is willing to help you. So, as much as it's not pagan, it is a resource to be used at any possible, with any need. When it comes to stuff like marijuana and cigarettes and alcohol, yes, those can be very, very addicting. And if it's something that you see as a problem, or if it's something that is affecting your life in a negative way, perhaps you should seek outside help. I don't know exactly what to say about, other than yes, share your experiences with others and explain to them exactly how terrible it was for you. It sucked for me to get rid of some of the terrible chemical influences in my life, but although it was hard, I had my family and I had my friends, and I was able to stop doing those things. And now it's just a matter of conviction and willpower to say, yeah, those things are bad for me and I need to not do them anymore. So I haven't gone back, with the exception of smoking. I am still a smoker, and I'm working on it every day. But when that happens and I stop smoking altogether, I am going to do my absolute best to not go back to it. So let's move on to the second question. The second question is from Nadnarb. I'm sorry, that sounds awfully wrong. about paganism and drug use. So, with the rise of popularity in religious movements like Rastafari, which feature marijuana, alcohol, or other drugs in their religious rituals, I would like to hear if any of you have ever practiced, heard of, or thought about Wiccan or pagan rituals involving mind-altering substances. Well, let's go with a couple of things. First of all, there's lots of research on things like the religious use of mind-altering substances, and I'm really intrigued by that. I am actually intrigued to the point where if I could in some way give up a little bit of my control freak ways and experience one or some of those substances, I may be willing to do it the way our ancestors did. And the only thing that holds me back on that is, one, I don't know which kind of psychoactive mushrooms were used in the northern part of Europe several centuries ago. And two, I don't have access to reindeer to filter those substances for me. And three, I don't know how I feel about drinking reindeer pee, because the way that it used to be is there was a certain type of mushroom that the shamans would feed to their reindeer, and the reindeer would ingest and process these plants, and then the psychotropic substance would come out in the reindeer's pee, and then the shaman would drink the pee to go on a trip, basically, and experience, oneness with the universe and experience the things that basically an acid trip will give you. But the reason that they did it that way is because trying to ingest the mushrooms themselves, it would kill them. So they would filter it through reindeer and drink their pee, and I don't know how I feel about that. It was an interesting idea, and I would consider the idea, and in a very, very controlled situation, I may consider the idea of psychotropic drugs as long as it was specifically dedicated to my religious practice and my spiritual path. Because otherwise, it falls under the heading of breaking the law, and I am one of those terrible, terrible, sticklers for the law. If it is an illegal substance and you are not allowed to consume it under normal circumstances, I will not consume it under those circumstances. If there is, however, a loophole, I will consider the idea of that loophole being a legal loophole that allows me to try that or do that. But regardless of whether or not it is morally okay, if it is legally not okay, I don't think you should do it. That's my opinion. When it comes to like Rastafari and the fact that marijuana is part of their ceremonies, good for them. I'm not a fan of marijuana. I tried it a few times when I was much younger, and it didn't really do much for me other than make me sleepy and paranoid. So I was not a huge fan. But as for psychotropic drugs and psychoactive drugs and things like that, I think they're fantastic for what they do for people with mental illnesses. A couple of people in my family, between the obsessive compulsive disorder we have that runs in our family and the schizophrenia that runs in our family, it's nice to know that those drugs are there to help people who have problems, but I don't personally think, recreationally speaking, they are a good idea. It's not a matter of whether or not they're safe. They're illegal recreationally, so I don't do them. But used in a spiritual practice, that would technically, in some states and in some places, make it legal to do those things. So if that's what you're doing it for, okay. If you're using that as an excuse to recreationally use the drugs that are otherwise illegal, I think you're cheating the system a little, and I'm a little judgy about that. That's just me personally. But this this is already a little bit long, so I'm just going to wrap up and say, if you are doing drugs for spiritual purposes or religious purposes, good on you. As for the idea of Like Kara was saying yesterday about getting drunk for ritual, I do imbibe alcohol during ritual. It is part of the the toasting. It's 3 rounds of 1 drink per round, so you're not drunk by the end of it by any means. You can, if you drink deeply, get a good buzz going on, but excuse me, it is one of those things that I don't personally have a problem with alcohol. My tolerance for alcohol is pretty up there. So when it comes to the ritual where it's honoring the ancestors and the gods and then boasting about the things we have done and will do, which is the 3 rounds of drinking during ritual, I don't have a problem with drinking alcohol during that. There are a couple of people who I have had ritual before with that are recovering alcoholics, and they don't drink alcohol during that, so it is not a necessary thing, but it is something that, like toasting with water, if you don't have a problem with it, it's kind of bad form to not do it the right way. And right way is obviously right for some and not for others, but in my opinion, I drink mead when I toast the gods because I find that more appropriate than using other substances. Anyway, so that's just basically one teeny little example of what I do using a controlled substance that I approve of completely, but it's really up to each individual as to what they should or should not be doing during ritual and because of their religion and because of their spirituality. But it's one of those things that you have to decide for yourself. But that is my opinion. If you guys have any questions, comments, or concerns, feel free to post those in the comments section below. But thanks for watching, everybody. And of course, until next time, Odin be with you.